Whether you have the courage to handle it is entirely up to you. What about the second part? I'm going to save it for a little while longer. You have just enough of a shock for the you've had just enough of a shock for the moment. Do realize it's coming through. It will make the truths revealed above seem gentle in comparison. Let's look now at some of the things the followers of John said. Were Abraham, Moses, quote-unquote, Miriam, David, Solomon, and Mary servants of the goddess Ruha, Isis, as the Medians have said? Let's find out. And again, let's use the Bible as our teacher. I already went to great lengths to show you the connection between Abraham, Joseph, and Miriam to Isis. Let's look at David, who is listed in the genealogy of Jesus. David was king of Israel and the sister state of Judea. The unification was his main accomplishment. Was David following a female goddess? David was a shepherd of sheep. We are told that the Lord was with him while he tended his flock and saved him from wild animals. Isis, we have learned, was the shepherdess, or patron goddess of the shepherds. His next big claim to fame is the slaying of Goliath with a sling and a stone. The sling, as a weapon, was not much favored by men. It was, however, used by the most feared enemies of the Greeks, the women warriors known as Amazons. David's capital was at Jerusalem. After the fall of Hazar, Jerusalem became the headquarters or main temple of Asherah or Ruha, as John said. It was this city that David ruled from. His next moment in history was brought about by an act of voyeurism. 2 Samuel 11:2. And it came to pass in the evening too that David arose from off his bed and walked upon the roof of the king's house, and from the roof he saw a woman washing herself. And the woman was very beautiful to look upon. And David sent and inquired after the woman. And one said, Is not this Bathsheba, the daughter of Eli, the wife of Uriah the Hittite? And David sent messengers and took her. And she came in unto him, and he lay with her, for she was purified from her uncleanness, and she returned unto her house. Here is another instance where the course of history was changed by the actions of a woman. You can bet that she knew David would see her there. Why did she wish to be with David? Because her son would later rule all Israel and build the high temple of Asherah at Jerusalem. His name was Solomon. We will look at him shortly. David had an illicit affair with Bathsheba. Notice the name Bathsheba. It means daughter of Sheba. Sheba is a nation ruled by sacred queens. It was one of the richest and strongest goddess strongholds of the ancient world. Much of the frankincense, myrrh, and gold came from Sheba. It was no accident that a daughter of Sheba was placed so close to the king. Sheba would play a big part in future biblical events. It is through Solomon's financial relationship with Sheba that funding for the Temple of Jerusalem would be found. Before we leave David to look at his son, verses below, in the religion that Isis priestesses ran, a sacred king was chosen to symbolically represent Isis' mate. Each year, in a special ceremony, a young virgin would be brought to the king. His duty was to play the part of the god and she the goddess. They would have intercourse. This ceremony also ensured that the king was still vital enough to lead the country. Now look at this. 1 Kings 1:2. Wherefore his servant said unto him, Let there be sought for my lord the king a young virgin, and let her stand before the king, and let her cherish him, and let her lie in thy bosom, that my lord the king may get heat. So they sought for a fair damsel throughout all the coast of Israel, and found Abishag, a Shunammite, and brought her to the king. And the damsel was very fair, and cherished the king, and ministered to him, but the king knew her not. Shortly after King David failed his virility test, Bathsheba came to the palace. David transferred the power of kingship to her son, Solomon. David, who had committed adultery with Bathsheba, murdered her husband, and then, taking her for his wife, died in his bed. Now, we look at the next chapter on John's list of goddess worshipers. King Solomon. His worship of the goddess was so blatant that even clergymen acknowledged that Solomon served the goddess Asherah. Of course, he came to his senses during the building of the great temple and worshiped the good male god. They tell us, if you believe that one, I have this little bridge over in Brooklyn for sale. Solomon, Solomon, Solomon. What are we going to do with you, Solomon? My friends, I will give you anything to have been there when the patriarchal fathers tried to work with these verses, with the verses like this one. 2 Kings 4:1. And Solomon made affinity with Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and took Pharaoh's daughter, and brought her into the city of David until he had made an end of the building of his own house, and the house of the Lord, and the wall of Jerusalem round about. Only the people sacrificed in high places, because there was no house built unto the name of the Lord until those days. The daughter of Pharaoh? Well, can you tell me who she was worshiping? That's right, Isis. But if that's not hint enough, look at where the people are worshiping, up on the mountain. The mountains were some of the most favored goddess worship sites known. The truth is, there was nothing they could do with these verses. But wait, it gets better. 2 Kings 4:25. And Judah and Israel dwelt safely, every man under his vine and under his fig, from Dan even to Beersheba, all the days of Solomon. Remember your goddess symbols? Here are two big ones, the vine and the fig. It is important to look at Asherah and some of the symbols associated with her more deeply. In many of the goddess temples, there was a large bowl or cistern filled with water and used in various rituals. This bowl was a symbolic womb. These are the same bowls that Solomon had placed in the temple of Jerusalem. The early writers of the Bible tried to portray the time of the temple's construction as the time when Solomon worshipped the male god. In fact, this was simply not true. As the above bowl examples shows, the temple was built for the goddess. One of her greatest symbols, seen in nearly all representations, was the lion. She was seen riding them, holding two in her hands, and flanked by one on either side. Now, with this in mind, take a look at the following verses. 1 Kings 7:29. And on the borders that were between the ledges were lions, oxen, and cherubims. And upon the ledges there was a base above, and beneath the lions and oxen were certain additions made of thin work. 1 Kings 7:36. For on the plates of the ledges thereof, and on the borders thereof, he graved cherubims, lions, and palm trees,